The space station called Cascade Prime floated in the darkness like a giant crystal. Inside, thousands of aliens from hundreds of worlds gathered for the Festival of Bonding. Lights of every color filled the massive halls. Music from a dozen different species played at once, somehow creating a beautiful harmony. Everyone was excited, hopeful, searching for their perfect match. Everyone except Queen Valora. She stood on the highest observation deck, alone. Her pale skin seemed to glow in the dim light. Her crimson eyes watched the celebrations below without interest. She had seen this festival 300 times before. 300 years of the same result. 300 years of going home alone while everyone else found their happiness. Valora was the ruler of the Nocturna Empire, one of the oldest and most powerful civilizations in the galaxy. Her people were beautiful and immortal. They fed on psychic energy and emotions instead of food or blood. Most species feared them. Some worshipped them. But very few wanted to bond with them. The problem was simple and cruel. The most powerful Nocturna were too strong for other species. Their psychic presence was like standing next to a star. It burned, it overwhelmed. Most beings couldn't even stand near Valora for more than a few minutes before their minds started to hurt. She had stopped hoping a long time ago. Now she only attended the festival because her people expected it. A queen must show strength even when she feels nothing but emptiness inside. "Your Majesty, the bonding ritual will begin soon," a voice said behind her. It was Ariam, one of her oldest advisors. The woman had served the crown for 200 years. She was loyal, intelligent, and always proper. "Perhaps this year will be different." Valora didn't turn around. "You say that every time, Aram, it won't be different." "It never is. The humans are attending for the first time," Ariam said carefully. "Perhaps one of them, humans are children," Valora interrupted, though not unkindly. "They only joined the Union 5 years ago. They're warriors, yes, brave and stubborn. But they have no psychic abilities. They wouldn't even register in the bonding ritual." Ariam bowed and left without another word. She knew better than to argue when the queen used that tone. Down in the main hall, the bonding ritual was beginning. Thousands of beings formed a huge circle. The psychic facilitators started their work, creating a field of energy that would connect compatible minds. It was ancient magic, older than most civilizations. When it worked, two beings would feel a pull toward each other. Their energies would match like puzzle pieces fitting together. Valora watched from above. She saw the lights begin to dance between people, saw them moving toward their matches, saw the joy on their faces when they found each other. It was beautiful. It made her feel more alone than ever. In the corner of the hall, a young human man stumbled. His name was Jiho Kang, and he was a doctor who studied alien minds. He was part of Earth's first delegation to the festival. His government had chosen him because he was special. Unlike most humans, Jiho could feel psychic energy. It was a mutation rare among his kind. On Earth, it had made him an outcast. In space, it made him valuable. But right now, it was making him confused. While everyone else was pairing off, moving toward their glowing matches, Jiho felt something else. A pull in a different direction. Not toward the warm, bright energies in the hall. Toward something dark and cold and distant. It felt like standing at the edge of an ocean at midnight. Dangerous, deep, ancient. He should have ignored it. He should have stayed with the other humans. But Jiho had never been good at doing what he should do. He followed the feeling. Out of the main hall. Through quieter corridors. Up several levels. Until he reached the observation deck. That's where he found her. Queen Valora stood with her back to him, looking out at the stars. She wore a dress that seemed to be made of shadows and starlight. Her long black hair fell down her back like a waterfall of night. Even from across the deck, Jiho could feel the power radiating from her. Should have scared him. It probably would have scared anyone else. Instead, he felt fascinated. "You shouldn't be here," Valora said without turning. Her voice was beautiful and sad. "The ritual is below." "I know," Jiho said. He walked closer, though his survival instincts screamed at him to run. "But I felt something pulling me up here. Pulling me toward you." Now Valora did turn. Her crimson eyes met his brown ones. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then her eyes widened slightly. Just for a second, surprise broke through her centuries of practiced calm. She felt it too. The resonance. The match. After 300 years of nothing, she felt a connection with this strange young human who shouldn't even have been able to sense her. "That's impossible," she whispered. "You're human. Your species doesn't have the psychic depth for bonding, especially not with a nocturna. Maybe someone forgot to tell my DNA that, Jiho said. He tried to smile, though his heart was beating fast. I'm Jiho Kang, from Earth. I know what Earth is, Valora said. She studied him like he was a puzzle she couldn't solve. Why aren't you afraid of me? Jiho thought about that. He could feel her emotions through his empathic sense. The loneliness was so deep it hurt. The resignation, the exhaustion of centuries spent alone. But underneath all that there was something else. A tiny spark of hope she was trying desperately to crush before it could hurt her again. I am afraid, he admitted, but not of you. I'm afraid of walking away without knowing why I felt that pull. I'm afraid of wondering for the rest of my life what would have happened if I'd been brave enough to say hello. For the first time in decades, Valora smiled. It was small and uncertain, like she'd forgotten how. Hello, Jiho from Earth. Hello, he replied. They stood there on the observation deck while the festival continued below. Two impossibly different beings who had somehow found each other. A human who lived for maybe 100 years if he was lucky, an immortal vampire queen who had already lived for centuries and would live for thousands more. They started talking. Small things at first. The stars. The station. The music drifting up from below. Then bigger things. Their homes. Their duties. Their loneliness. Hours passed. Neither of them noticed. Below them, the bonding ritual ended. Couples celebrated their matches. Diplomats made political connections. The festival moved into its second night of 7, but on the observation deck, Queen Valora and Dr. Jiho Kang talked like they had known each other for years. And for the first time in 3 centuries, Valora forgot to feel alone. She didn't know it yet, but everything was about to change. The festival lasted 7 days. Jiho and Valora met every night on the observation deck. They never planned it. They just kept finding each other, drawn together by something neither could explain. On the second night, Valora told him about her empire, about the planets covered in eternal twilight where her people lived, about the responsibility of ruling for centuries, watching generations of other species rise and fall like waves, about how exhausting it was to never rest, never stop, never have anyone who truly understood. Jiho listened and told her about Earth, about the blue oceans and green forests, about humans who lived fast and died young, packing as much life as possible into their brief time, about how he'd always felt different, able to sense emotions and thoughts when everyone else was blind to them, about being lonely in a crowd of his own species. We're both outsiders, Valora said thoughtfully. They sat on the edge of the observation deck with their legs hanging over the side. Below them, stars stretched forever. You among your people. Me among mine. Maybe that's why we fit, Jiho said. 2 puzzle pieces that don't fit anywhere else. On the third night, Valora explained what nocturna really were, how they fed on emotions and psychic energy, how bonding worked for her species. When a nocturna bonded with someone, that person became their only source of food. They couldn't feed from anyone else. If the bond broke, the nocturna would starve. It's a terrible risk, she admitted. Her crimson eyes reflected starlight. That's why many nocturna never bond at all. They feed lightly from many sources, never depending on one person. It's safer. Lonelier, but safer. But you wanted to bond, Jiho said. It wasn't a question. He could feel the truth through his empathic sense. I wanted it once, Valora corrected quietly. 300 years ago when I was young and stupid and thought love was possible for someone like me. Now I know better. What if you're wrong? Jiho asked. What if you just hadn't met the right person yet? Valora laughed, but it was a sad sound. The right person? I'm 300 years old. You're what, 30? 32, Jiho said. But who's counting? I am, Valora said seriously. Jiho, even if we bonded, you would die in perhaps 60 more years. 70 if you're lucky. That's nothing to me, a blink. And then I'd be alone again, unable to feed, slowly starving for centuries until my body finally gave up. Do you understand how cruel that would be? What if I told you I already thought about that? Jiho said. He turned to face her fully. What if I said I don't care? Then I'd say you're young and foolish. Maybe, Jiho agreed. Or maybe humans see time differently than you do. We only get 70 or 80 years, so we make them count. Every day matters. Every moment is precious because we don't get many of them. Would you rather have 60 years of happiness or 300 more years of this? He gestured at the empty deck around them. Alone, safe, miserable. Valora stood up suddenly. You don't know what you're saying. Then explain it to me, Jiho said, standing too. Because from where I'm standing, you're letting fear make your choices. You're so afraid of being hurt that you won't let yourself be happy. And you're so young you think love conquers everything, Valora shot back, but her voice shook slightly. This isn't a story, Jiho, this is real life. My real life. I've lived through the fall of civilizations. I've watched stars be born and die. I've attended the funerals of people I loved. And you want me to do that again? To bond with you knowing I'll have to watch you age and die? Yes, Jiho said simply. Because the alternative is this. Both of us alone. Both of us afraid. Both of us pretending we don't feel this connection. They stared at each other. The observation deck was completely silent except for the distant hum of the station's engines. Finally, Valora turned away. I need to think. Don't follow me, she left. Jiho stood alone on the deck for a long time, wondering if he just ruined everything. The next 2 days were torture. Jiho looked for Valora everywhere but couldn't find her. The other human delegates asked him what was wrong. He couldn't explain. How could he tell them he'd fallen for an alien vampire queen? They'd think he was crazy. Maybe he was crazy. On the 6th night, Valora appeared on the observation deck. Jiho had been sitting there for hours hoping she'd come. When he saw her, his heart jumped. I talked to my advisors, Valora said without greeting. They think I'm insane. They reminded me that you're human, young, weak compared to other species. They said it would damage my reputation, make me look desperate. Jiho's heart sank. I understand. I'm not finished, Valora interrupted. She walked closer until she stood right in front of him. Then I talked to myself. For 2 days I argued with myself. Listed all the reasons this is a terrible idea. And there are many reasons, Jiho. So many reasons we shouldn't do this. But, Jiho asked hopefully. But then I realized something, Valora said. Her crimson eyes were softer than he'd ever seen them. For 300 years I've been safe, careful, logical, and I've been miserable. Maybe it's time to be foolish instead. Maybe it's time to choose happiness even if it won't last forever. Jiho's breath caught. Are you saying the final bonding ceremony is tomorrow night? Valora said. If you're still sure. If you really want this, I'll be there. And I'll choose you, Jiho Kang from Earth. I'll choose you even though it terrifies me. Even though my advisors think I'm crazy. Even though I'll probably regret it when you're gone. You won't regret it, Jiho promised. He took her hands. They were cool and soft. I'll make sure every day counts. I'll make sure you never regret choosing me. Don't make promises you can't keep, Valora said, but she was smiling. The next night, the grand hall was packed for the final bonding ceremony. This was when matched pairs could make their connection permanent. It was a serious commitment, a psychic bond that couldn't be broken except by death. The human delegation sat together, confused about why Jiho insisted on attending. They thought he'd already failed to match with anyone. They were shocked when he stood up and walked to the center of the ceremonial circle. The entire hall went silent when Queen Valora entered. She rarely participated in the ceremony itself. Seeing her walk toward the circle made everyone stare. Seeing her walk toward Jiho made everyone gasp. I choose you, Jiho said loud enough for everyone to hear. His voice was steady even though his hands shook. If you'll have me, Valora stood before him. 300 years old, powerful enough to destroy planets, lonely enough to risk everything. She reached out and took his hand. I choose you, she said. Her voice carried through the hall. I choose you, Jiho Kang. I choose hope over fear. I choose happiness over safety. I choose you. The psychic facilitators began their work. Energy swirled around Jiho and Valora, testing their compatibility, preparing to link them forever. The light that erupted from them was unlike anything anyone had seen before. It was silver and midnight blue, cold and warm at the same time. It spiraled up toward the ceiling, bright enough to make people shield their eyes. When it faded, Jiho and Valora stood together, hands clasped. Between them, an invisible bond now existed. They could feel each other's emotions, share each other's thoughts. They were two beings who had become something more. Valora's eyes were wet with tears. Jiho was grinning like an idiot. Around them, the hall erupted in shocked whispers. A human and a Nocturna queen. No one had thought it possible. But there they stood. Proof that sometimes the impossible happens. Sometimes the lonely queen finds her match in the most unexpected place. The first week of the bond was wonderful. Jiho had never felt anything like it. He could sense Valora's emotions like they were his own. When she was happy, warmth flooded through him. When she worried, he felt the tension in his chest. It was intimate and strange and perfect. Valora felt it too. For the first time in centuries, she wasn't alone in her own head. Jiho's thoughts brushed against hers like gentle waves. His emotions were so bright and strong compared to other species. Humans felt everything intensely because they had so little time. Every joy was bigger. Every sorrow cut deeper. It was overwhelming and beautiful. But the galaxy was less pleased about their union. The news spread fast. Queen Valora of the Nocturna Empire had bonded with a human, a species barely 5 years into the Galactic Union. A species with no natural psychic abilities. Many saw it as romantic. Many more saw it as a scandal. The Draken hierarchy was particularly upset. The Drakon were an ancient reptilian empire that had competed with the Nocturna for influence for thousands of years. Their emperor, Rexoth, saw Valora's choice as weakness. She was so desperate for companionship that she settled for a primitive, Rexoth told his council. This proves the Nocturna are declining. Perhaps it's time we reconsidered who leads in this sector of space. He began sending messages to other empires, planting doubts, suggesting that a queen who made such a poor choice might make other poor choices. Political choices. Dangerous choices, but Jiho knew nothing about this yet. He was too busy learning what it meant to be bonded to Valora. Every day she needed to feed from his emotions and psychic energy. It didn't hurt exactly. It felt like something was gently pulling at the edges of his mind. Afterward, he felt tired and needed to rest. Is it always this exhausting? He asked after the first week. They were in his temporary quarters on Cascade Prime, waiting for transport to the Nocturna homeworld. Your body is still adjusting, Valora explained. She looked concerned. Humans aren't naturally psychic. Your energy replenishes differently than other species. I'm trying to be careful, but I need to feed regularly or I'll weaken. I'll be fine, Jiho assured her. Just need more sleep than usual. That's all. But it wasn't just the feeding that was hard. It was the stares. The whispers. Everywhere they went, people looked at them like they were a strange science experiment. Some were curious. Others were judgmental. A few were outright hostile. When they arrived at Umbra Prime, the Nocturna homeworld, things got worse. The planet was beautiful in a dark, gothic way. The sun was dim, casting everything in permanent twilight. Tall spires reached toward the purple sky. Cities glowed with soft lights. Everything was elegant and ancient and a little bit scary. The palace was even more impressive. It had stood for 10,000 years, built of black stone that seemed to absorb light. Inside, everything was luxury and shadows. Valora's people moved through the halls like graceful ghosts, and almost all of them hated Jiho on sight. A human, one noble said loudly as Jiho passed. She didn't bother to lower her voice. How embarrassing for Her Majesty. I heard humans only live about 80 years, another whispered. She'll be alone again before we know it. What was she thinking? Jiho tried to ignore them. He knew this wouldn't be easy. But knowing something and experiencing it were different things. By the end of the first day, he felt exhausted, not just from the feeding, but from the constant judgment. Ariam, Valora's advisor, was one of the worst. She was always polite to Jiho's face, but he could feel her disapproval like ice in the air. One evening, he overheard her talking to Valora in the throne room. Your Majesty, the council is concerned, Ariam said carefully. Your bonding to a human has created political complications. The Draken are spreading rumors. Other empires are questioning your judgment. Let them question, Valora replied coldly. I didn't ask their permission to choose my mate. Of course not, Ariam agreed. But there's another concern. Your human appears to be struggling with the bond. He's tired all the time. He looks unwell. What if he can't sustain you long term? He's adjusting, Valora said. But Jiho could feel her worry through the bond. She was scared about the same thing. That night, Valora found Jiho in their shared chambers. He was sitting by the window, looking out at the dark city below. You heard the conversation with Ariam, she said. It wasn't a question. Through the bond she knew I did, Jiho admitted. Is it true? Am I not giving you enough energy? Valora sat beside him. You're giving me everything you can. But Ariam is right. You're exhausted. I can feel it. I'm taking too much from you. You're taking what you need to survive, Jiho said firmly. That's what we agreed to. I agreed to bond with you, not to drain you until you're a shell. Valora's crimson eyes were full of guilt. Maybe they're right. Maybe I made a mistake. Maybe humans aren't compatible with Nocturna long-term. Don't, Jiho said sharply. Don't let them get in your head. I'm adjusting. It's only been 2 weeks. Give me time. But time was something they might not have. Because Ariam wasn't just concerned. She was planning. She had served the crown for 200 years. She had always imagined that when Valora finally bonded, it would be with someone worthy. Someone strong, someone from a powerful species. She had hoped it would be her own son Taeyang, a famous Nocturna warrior. Instead, Valora had chosen a weak human who could barely sustain her. It was unacceptable. Ariam began meeting secretly with representatives from the Draken hierarchy. They shared a common goal: prove that Valora's bond was flawed. If they could do that, they could challenge her rule. Among the Nocturna, a queen who couldn't maintain a proper bond was considered unfit to lead. They started small, arranging exhausting diplomatic functions that Jiho had to attend, making sure he got little sleep. Serving food at banquets that humans couldn't digest well so he'd feel sick. Nothing obviously malicious, just small things that added up. Jiho started to struggle more. He was tired all the time now. He tried to hide it from Valora, but the bond made that impossible. She felt everything he felt. You need to rest, she told him after a particularly awful banquet. He'd barely been able to stand by the end of it. I'm fine, Jiho lied. You're not fine. You're dying. Valora's voice broke. I can feel your energy draining. This isn't working. I'm killing you slowly. Stop it, Jiho said. He took her hands. You're not killing me, they are. Can't you see what's happening? They're trying to break us apart. They're sabotaging me. Or maybe they're right, Valora whispered. Maybe this bond was a beautiful mistake. Maybe I should release you before it's too late. Can you even do that? Jiho asked. Can a bond be broken without killing you? Valora was silent. They both knew the answer. Once formed, a Nocturna bond was permanent. If it broke, she would slowly starve. It might take centuries, but she would die. I won't let you suffer for my sake, Jiho said firmly. And I won't let them win. We just need to prove that our bond is strong, that I can sustain you, that humans and Nocturna can work together. How? Valora asked. How do we prove that when you're getting weaker every day? Before Jiho could answer, Ariam entered the chamber. Her face was formal and cold. Your Majesty, I bring news from the council, she said. The Draken hierarchy has formally challenged your rule. They invoke the law of bonds. They claim your bonding is incomplete and flawed. They demand proof through the trial of souls. Valora went very still. The trial? That hasn't been invoked in 500 years. What's the trial of souls? Jiho asked. Ariam's lips curved in a smile that didn't reach her eyes. It's an ancient test where bonded pairs must merge their consciousness completely. They enter a shared mindscape where they face their deepest fears and darkest memories. If the bond is true and strong, they emerge together. If the bond is weak or false, one or both of them breaks. Their minds shatter. And if we refuse? Valora asked. Then you forfeit your throne by default, Ariam said. The challenge has been witnessed by the full council and representatives from 20 different empires. You cannot refuse, Valora looked at Jiho. Through the bond, he felt her terror. Not for herself, for him. No human had ever attempted the trial of souls. No one knew if his mind could survive merging completely with a being as powerful and ancient as Valora. When? Valora asked quietly. 3 days, Ariam said. The ceremony has already been arranged. After she left, Valora turned to Jiho. You don't have to do this. We could run. Leave the Empire. Find somewhere remote where we could live quietly. And abandon your people? Jiho shook his head. No, we do the trial, we prove them all wrong. You could die, Valora said. Tears ran down her pale cheeks. Your mind could break. I could lose you. You won't, Jiho promised. He pulled her close. Because our bond is real. It's strong. And together we can face anything. But even as he said it, doubt crept into his heart. 3 days to prepare for a trial that could destroy his mind. 3 days to prove that a human and a Nocturna queen could truly be one. 3 days until everything would change. The 3 days passed too quickly. Valora spent every moment teaching Jiho what to expect in the trial of souls. But the truth was, no one really knew. Every bonded pair experienced it differently. The mindscape they entered would be shaped by both their consciousnesses, filled with their shared and individual fears. "The most important thing is to stay connected," Valora explained. They sat together in her private meditation room. "No matter what you see, no matter how scared you get, hold on to our bond." "Hold on to me, I will," Jiho promised. But his hands were shaking. He was terrified, though he tried to hide it. Through the bond, Valora felt everything. "You can still back out," she whispered. "I could abdicate. Give up the throne. We could leave together, and let them win." Jiho shook his head. "No, besides, this isn't just about proving our bond anymore. It's about showing the galaxy that humans belong here, that we're not weak just because we're young." The morning of the trial arrived. The grand ceremonial chamber was packed with witnesses. Every major empire had sent representatives. The Nocturna Council sat in elevated seats. The Draken delegates looked smug. They expected to see the human fail, proving that Valora's judgment was flawed. Ariam supervised the preparations. She showed no emotion, but Jiho could sense her anticipation. She wanted him to fail. She'd been working toward this moment for weeks. At the center of the chamber was a raised platform with 2 chairs facing each other. Between them was a crystal that pulsed with psychic energy. This would be the anchor for their minds during the trial. Valora wore ceremonial robes of deep purple and black. She looked like the queen she was, powerful and ancient. Jiho wore simple clothes. He looked like what he was, a young human who was way out of his depth. They took their seats. Their hands clasped around the crystal. The moment their skin touched it, energy sparked between them. "Last chance," Valora said softly. Only he could hear. "We could still run." "No running," Jiho said. He tried to smile. "Let's show them what we're made of." The psychic facilitators began their work. Energy swirled around Jiho and Valora. The crystal between them grew brighter. Brighter. Until it was like staring into a star. Then everything went white. When Jiho could see again, he wasn't in the ceremonial chamber anymore. He stood in a vast space that seemed to go on forever. Above was darkness filled with stars. Below was water that reflected the sky like a mirror. In the distance, structures rose and fell, shifting like dreams. This was the mindscape. A place created by their combined consciousness. "Jiho?" Valora's voice came from behind him. He turned, and there she was. She looked the same, but also different. More vulnerable somehow. This was her true self without the armor of being queen. "I'm here," he said. Relief flooded through him. "What do we do now?" "We walk forward together," Valora said. She took his hand. "The trial will show us things, test us. We have to face whatever comes without letting go of each other." They started walking. The water beneath their feet rippled with each step but held their weight. As they moved, the landscape shifted around them. The first test came quickly. The sky darkened, and suddenly Jiho was alone. Completely alone. He stood in an empty white room. Valora was gone. The bond was gone. He couldn't feel anything except crushing isolation. This was his deepest fear. Being alone. Being left behind? All his life he'd been different, unable to connect with others. His empathic abilities had made him an outsider among his own people. The thought of going back to that loneliness was worse than death. "Valora," he called out. His voice echoed in the emptiness. "Where are you?" No answer. Just silence that pressed against his ears like weight. Panic clawed at his chest. This was it. The trial was showing him what he'd always known deep down. He didn't belong anywhere. Not on Earth, not in space. Not even with Valora. He was destined to be alone forever. But then, faint as a whisper, he felt something. A thread of warmth. The bond. It was still there. Valora was still there. He just had to hold on. Jiho closed his eyes and focused on that tiny thread of connection. He pulled on it, poured all his will into it, and slowly the white room began to crack. Light seeped through the cracks. Valora's presence grew stronger. The room shattered. Jiho stumbled back into the mindscape. Valora caught him, her arms wrapping around him tightly. "I'm here," she said fiercely. "I'm here. You're not alone." But there was no time to rest. The mindscape shifted again. This time it was Valora's turn to face her fear. They stood in a grand palace hall. But it was empty except for a throne, and on that throne sat Valora. A different Valora. Older looking, though that didn't quite make sense for someone immortal. But her eyes were dead. Empty. She sat alone in perfect silence, staring at nothing. "This is what I'm afraid of," the real Valora whispered beside Jiho. This is my future. After you're gone, after you die and leave me alone, I'll sit on my throne for another 1,000 years with nothing but memories to keep me company. I'll be alive but not living, existing but not feeling, a ghost ruling an empire. The vision Valora on the throne turned to look at them. When she spoke, her voice was hollow. You know this is inevitable. He'll die. They all die. And you'll be alone again. Why did you let yourself hope? Hope only makes the fall hurt more. Jiho felt Valora's hand tighten around his. Through the bond, he felt her despair trying to pull her under. She was giving up, accepting this terrible future as truth. No, Jiho said firmly. He stepped in front of Valora, blocking her view of the throne. Look at me. Not at that. At me. Valora's crimson eyes focused on his face. Yes, I'm going to die someday, Jiho said. Maybe in 60 years. Maybe tomorrow. We don't know. But that vision isn't your future. You know why? Because you're not the same person who sat alone for 300 years. You're not afraid to feel anymore. You're not hiding from life. And when I'm gone, you won't go back to being that empty ghost. You'll remember what it was like to be alive. And maybe, just maybe, you'll let yourself care about someone else again. Or you'll live for yourself, for your people, for art or music or exploration. But you won't be that hollow thing on the throne. I won't let you become that. The vision wavered. The throne room began to fade, you promise? Valora whispered. You promise my life won't end when yours does? I promise, Jiho said. Your life is just beginning. We're just beginning. The throne room shattered like glass. They were back in the mindscape, standing on the dark water under the stars. But something had changed. The landscape was more stable now. More real, they walked further. The test came faster now. Jiho had to face his fear of inadequacy, of not being good enough for Valora. She had to face her guilt about taking his energy, slowly consuming him to keep herself alive. They faced fears together and separately, each time holding on to the bond that connected them. And something amazing happened. With each test they passed, the bond grew stronger. Their minds weren't just connected anymore. They were merging, becoming something new. Jiho felt Valora's memories flowing into him. 300 years of experiences. The joy of her first flight. The pain of losing her parents to a plague a century ago. The crushing loneliness of attending bonding festival after festival. The moment she first saw him and felt hope for the first time in so long, Valora felt his memories too. Growing up different on Earth. The confusion of sensing emotions no one else could feel. The isolation of being special in a way that made people uncomfortable. The courage it took to follow that pull toward her on the observation deck. The absolute certainty he'd felt when he chose her. Their memories mixed and mingled until it was hard to tell where one ended and the other began. They saw through each other's eyes, felt through each other's hearts, and they understood something the galaxy didn't. Age didn't matter, species didn't matter. What mattered was this: they chose each other. Every day, with every breath, they chose each other. That choice was the foundation of their bond. The final test came. They stood together facing a wall of pure darkness. It was every fear, every doubt, every reason they shouldn't work combined into one overwhelming force. Together? Jiho asked. Together, Valora agreed. They walked into the darkness hand in hand. It tried to separate them, tried to overwhelm them, but they held on. And slowly, impossibly, light began to grow between them. Not from the darkness breaking. From them, from their bond, from the simple truth that they belonged together. The darkness couldn't stand against that light. It dissolved like mist in sunshine. And then they were back in the ceremonial chamber, sitting in the chairs, hands clasped around the crystal that now shone like a star. The entire chamber was silent. Everyone stared at them with wide eyes. Some looked shocked. Some looked amazed. Ariam looked like she'd seen a ghost, because floating above Jiho and Valora was a visual representation of their bond. It was beautiful. Threads of silver and midnight blue wove together in complex patterns. It pulsed with life and strength and something that could only be called love. No one could deny it now. Their bond wasn't weak. It was one of the strongest anyone had ever seen. Stronger because of their differences, not despite them. Valora and Jiho opened their eyes at the same moment. They looked at each other and smiled. They'd done it. Together, they'd faced the impossible and won. The silence in the ceremonial chamber lasted for exactly 5 seconds. Then everyone started talking at once. Delegates from different empires argued about what they'd just witnessed. Nocturna nobles whispered frantically to each other. The Dracon representatives looked furious, but Jiho barely heard any of it. He was still holding Valora's hand around the crystal, and through their bond he felt something incredible. The trial hadn't just tested them, it had transformed them. Their connection was deeper now, stronger. He could feel Valora's thoughts brushing against his like gentle waves. She could sense his emotions as clearly as her own. And there was something else. Since the trial ended, Jiho didn't feel tired anymore. The constant exhaustion that had plagued him for weeks was gone. Instead, he felt energized, clear, like something had finally clicked into place. "What happened?" he whispered to Valora. She smiled, and through the bond he felt her joy and relief. "We balanced. Your mind and mine found equilibrium. You're not just feeding me anymore. We're sharing energy back and forth." The bond was incomplete before because we were both holding back, both afraid. Now it's whole. The head of the council stood up. He was an ancient Nocturna named Elder Minho, older even than Valora. His voice cut through the chaos in the chamber. "I have witnessed bonding ceremonies for 2,000 years, he said. Every voice fell silent. "Never have I seen a bond manifest with such strength and clarity." "The trial of souls has spoken. Queen Valora's bond is not only valid, but exceptionally powerful. The challenge is answered. The challenge is defeated." The Draken representative stood up angrily. "This proves nothing. The human could still fail to sustain her long term." "You demand nothing," Elder Minho interrupted. His ancient eyes were cold. "You invoked the trial. The trial has given its answer. If you continue to challenge our queen's judgment, we will consider it an act of aggression against the Nocturna Empire." "Do you wish to start a war, Ambassador?" The Draken representative sat down. He looked furious but said nothing more. Ariam stepped forward. For a moment, Jiho thought she would continue to oppose them, but she surprised everyone by bowing deeply to Valora. "Your Majesty, I apologize," she said. Her voice was formal but sincere. "I doubted your choice. I thought you were making a mistake. I see now that I was wrong. Your bond is true. Perhaps I have been wrong about many things." Valora studied her old advisor carefully. Then she nodded. "We will speak later, Ariam, about trust and loyalty and second chances." The ceremony ended. Delegates began to leave, talking excitedly about what they'd witnessed. Some came to congratulate Valora and Jiho personally. The representatives from Earth were particularly excited. One of them, Ambassador Hajin, clapped Jiho on the shoulder hard enough to make him stumble. "Do you have any idea what you've just done?" Hajin asked, grinning. "You've shown the whole galaxy that humans can bond with even the most powerful species. You've opened doors for our people that we didn't even know existed. You're a hero, Jiho." "I just fell in love," Jiho said. "That's all? That's all?" Hajin laughed. "Kid, sometimes falling in love changes the whole galaxy." Over the next few weeks, things slowly returned to normal. Or rather, they found a new normal. The Nocturna court gradually accepted Jiho. It helped that he'd proven himself in the trial. It helped more that he genuinely cared about their empire and worked hard to understand their culture. Jiho became more than just the queen's consort. He became a bridge between the Nocturna Empire and humanity. His unique position allowed him to negotiate treaties, arrange cultural exchanges, and help other humans who wanted to explore relationships with alien species. It turned out that Jiho and Valora weren't unique after all. Several other powerful beings who had been considered unmatchable started looking at humans with new interest. Humans, with their emotional intensity and psychic flexibility, were compatible with species that couldn't bond with anyone else. A Nocturna noble bonded with a human artist. A crystalline being from a gaseous planet found her match with a human pilot. A telepathic whale-like creature bonded with a human marine biologist. Each time the galaxy was a little less shocked. Humans were young, yes. They lived brief lives compared to most species. But they lived those lives with an intensity that made them perfect partners for beings who had forgotten how to feel. They brought passion and creativity and hope to relationships that had seemed impossible. 6 months after the trial, Valora and Jiho stood in her private garden on Umbra Prime. It was their favorite spot, a place of dark flowers that bloomed in twilight and fountains that sang with psychic energy. "Do you ever regret it?" Valora asked quietly. "Bonding with me? You've given up so much. Your life on Earth. The chance to have a normal relationship with a normal lifespan. The ability to ever leave me since our bond is permanent. Jiho pulled her close. Through the bond, he let her feel everything he felt. The love, the contentment, the absolute certainty that he'd made the right choice. Every morning I wake up next to you is a morning I'm grateful to be alive, he said. You asked me once if I'd rather have 60 years of happiness or 300 years of loneliness. I told you I'd choose happiness. I'd make that choice again. Every single day I'd make that choice again. Even knowing how it ends? Valora asked. Someday, decades from now, you'll die. I'll feel you leave through our bond, and then I'll have to figure out how to live without you. You won't be without me, Jiho said. Not really. I'll be part of you forever. Every memory we make, every moment we share, that's all permanent. Death can take my body, but it can't take what we've built together. And you're going to be okay after I'm gone.
You know why?
Because you're not that lonely queen standing on the observation deck anymore. You're alive. You're connected. Not just to me, but to the world. And that won't end when I do. Valora smiled. It was the smile she only gave him. Warm and genuine and full of the emotions she'd kept locked away for so long. You know what I think? She said. I think you've changed me more than I've changed you. 300 years I spent being careful, being safe, being alone. You taught me how to be brave again. How to hope, how to live instead of just existing. We changed each other, Jiho corrected. That's what love does. That's what bonding means. We're not the same people we were on that observation deck 6 months ago. We're better. They stood together as the eternal twilight deepened into night. Around them, the garden's psychic flowers began to glow. Above them, the stars of the Nocturna homeworld shone like diamonds scattered across velvet. Somewhere in the palace, the council was meeting to discuss treaties. Somewhere on Earth, Jiho's family was looking up at the stars and wondering about their son among the aliens. Somewhere in space, another impossible bonding was forming between species that had thought they'd never find their match. But Jiho and Valora weren't thinking about any of that. They were just being together, sharing the bond that connected them, feeling grateful for every moment they had. Tell me about your day, Valora said softly. It was their evening ritual. Sharing stories, sharing lives, sharing everything. So Jiho told her about the human delegation he'd met with, about the trade agreement he'd helped negotiate, about the funny thing he'd seen in the marketplace. Small things, normal things, the kind of things that make up a life. And Valora listened and laughed and shared her own day. She told him about council meetings and political decisions and the new art installation she'd commissioned. She talked to him not as a queen to a subject, but as one partner to another. This was their life now. Not perfect, never easy, but theirs. Built on choice and courage and love that transcended every difference between them. Years would pass. Decades would pass. Jiho would age while Valora stayed young. Their love would deepen and change and grow stronger through every challenge. They would face political enemies and natural disasters and the simple complications of two very different beings building a life together. And eventually, yes, Jiho would die. His human body couldn't last forever, even sustained by Valora's power through their bond. When that day came, she would grieve. She would hurt in ways she hadn't hurt in centuries, but she wouldn't break. She wouldn't become that hollow ghost sitting on an empty throne. Because Jiho had taught her something crucial. Life was about more than just surviving. It was about connecting, about loving, about choosing joy even when joy was temporary. After Jiho, Valora would go on. She would rule her empire with wisdom earned through love and loss. She would help other impossible bondings form. She would live not just for duty but for herself. And she would carry Jiho's memory not as a weight but as a gift. Proof that she'd been brave enough to choose happiness. But that was decades in the future. Tonight they were together in the garden holding hands, sharing stories, being alive. I love you, Jiho said. He said it often. Humans did. They couldn't help expressing their feelings constantly because they knew time was precious. I love you too, Valora replied. She'd learned to say it from him. For 300 years those words had been theoretical. Now they were real. Now they meant everything. Above them, a shooting star streaked across the sky. Jiho didn't make a wish. He didn't need to. He already had everything he wanted.